The snowstorm hit like nature's fury had been saving up all winter for this one night. Camila Rodriguez pressed her face against the frosted window of her small rental house, watching the wind bend the old oak tree in her front yard until she thought it might snap. The power had been flickering for the last hour, and she'd already placed candles around the living room just in case. At 26, she'd weathered plenty of Colorado storms, but this one felt different. More violent. More desperate. She pulled her thick red sweater closer around her shoulders and was about to step away from the window when she saw something that made her heart skip. Through the whirling snow, headlights were crawling down her street, moving so slowly she wondered if the driver could even see the road. The car, some expensive-looking sedan she couldn't identify in the storm, lurched and stuttered before coming to a complete stop right in front of her small fence. The engine died. Camila watched, holding her breath, as the driver's door opened and a tall figure emerged into the blizzard. Even from her window she could see the man struggling against the wind, his expensive coat whipping around him like a dark flag. But what made her gasp and press closer to the glass was what she saw next. He was reaching into the back seat, and when he turned toward her house, she could make out the unmistakable shape of a baby carrier in his arms. Baby. In this storm. Without a second thought, Camila ran to her front door and threw it open, not caring that the frigid wind immediately attacked her face and sent her long black hair flying. "Hey," she called out, her voice nearly lost in the howling storm. "Are you okay?" The man looked up, and even through the snow she could see relief flood his features. He was handsome in that polished way that spoke of money and privilege, with dark hair already covered in snowflakes and eyes that held something close to panic. "My car," he shouted back, having to raise his voice over the wind. "It just died. I have my daughter." He lifted the carrier slightly, and Camila could see a tiny pink blanket peeking out from under the protective cover. "Come on," she called back without hesitation, waving him toward her. "Get in here before you both freeze." She watched him navigate through the snow drifts in her small front yard, his expensive shoes clearly not designed for this weather. He was tall, probably 6 feet, and moved with the careful precision of someone carrying precious cargo. When he reached her porch, she got her first clear look at him. His coat probably cost more than she made in 3 months, and his watch caught the porch light even through the snow on his wrist. But his eyes, those deep brown eyes, held genuine fear and gratitude that money couldn't fake. "Thank you," he said, slightly out of breath as she ushered him inside. "I'm Adrian Campbell. And this is Emma." He gestured to the carrier, where Camila could now see a beautiful baby girl with tiny fists and rosy cheeks, somehow still sleeping despite the chaos. "I'm Camila," she said, closing the door against the storm and immediately feeling the temperature difference. "Rodriguez. And don't worry about it. Nobody should be out in this weather, especially not with a baby." Adrian set the carrier down gently on her couch and ran a hand through his damp hair. "I was trying to get to Denver. There was a family emergency, and I thought I could make it before the storm got bad." He looked around her modest living room, taking in the worn but clean furniture, the small stack of medical bills she'd forgotten to put away on the coffee table, the single framed photo of her and her parents on the mantel. "I'm sorry to impose like this. My phone died and I didn't know what else to do." Camila was already moving toward the kitchen. "You're not imposing. Let me get you some coffee. And I should warm up some milk for the baby if she needs it." "I have formula," Adrian said quickly, reaching into a designer diaper bag that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I can handle it. I don't want to be any trouble." "It's no trouble," Camila replied, filling the kettle with water. "How old is she?" 5 months, Adrian said, his voice softening as he looked at his daughter. "She's been such a good traveler until now. I think she can sense when I'm stressed." As if summoned by her father's words, Emma began to stir in her carrier, making small baby sounds that immediately drew both adults' attention. Adrian moved to unbuckle her, lifting her with practiced ease that surprised Camila. He clearly wasn't one of those fathers who left all the baby care to someone else. "Hello, beautiful girl," he murmured to Emma, who opened dark eyes that matched her father's and looked around with the curious expression babies get when they're in a new place. "We're safe now, thanks to the kind lady." Emma's gaze found Camila across the room, and something in those innocent eyes made Camila's heart clench. She'd always been good with children, had dreamed of having her own someday when her financial situation wasn't so precarious. Watching this clearly wealthy man hold his daughter with such tenderness, she wondered what circumstances had brought them out in this storm alone. The kettle whistled and Camila poured hot water over instant coffee in 2 mugs. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm. Here, she said, bringing Adrian a steaming cup. This should help warm you up. Adrian accepted the coffee with genuine gratitude. This is very kind of you, Miss Rodriguez. I know this is unusual, a stranger showing up at your door in a storm. Please call me Camila. And it's not unusual at all. It's just human decency. She settled into the chair across from him, cradling her own mug. Where were you headed in Denver? A shadow crossed Adrian's face. The hospital. My assistant called and said there was an emergency with my father. I'm his only family besides Emma. He looked down at his daughter, who was now studying the room with wide eyes. I probably shouldn't have tried to drive in this weather, but I was worried. Camila felt a pang of sympathy. She knew what it was like to worry about family, to feel that desperate need to be there when someone needed you. Is your wife meeting you there? She asked gently. Adrian's expression grew even darker. Emma's mother isn't in the picture, he said quietly. It's just the two of us. There was pain in those words, a story that Camila sensed he didn't share often. She decided not to press. Well, you're both welcome to stay here until the storm passes. I've got a spare room, and Emma can sleep wherever you think she'll be most comfortable. I couldn't ask you to do that, Adrian protested. You've already done so much. You're not asking, Camila said firmly. I'm offering. And from the sound of that wind, you're not going anywhere tonight anyway. Even if we could get your car running, the roads will be too dangerous. As if to emphasize her point, a particularly strong gust of wind rattled the windows, and the lights flickered again. Emma made a small sound of distress, and Adrian instinctively pulled her closer. See, Camila said with a small smile. Even Emma agrees. You should stay. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and Camila could see him weighing his options, his pride warring with his common sense and concern for his daughter. Finally he nodded. If you're sure it's not too much trouble, then yes. Thank you. I'll pay you for the inconvenience, of course. Absolutely not, Camila said quickly. This isn't a hotel. It's just neighbors helping neighbors. But even as she said it, she knew this man wasn't exactly a neighbor. Everything about him, from his expensive clothes to the way he carried himself, spoke of a world far removed from her modest rental house and stack of unpaid bills. Yet here he was, vulnerable and grateful, holding his baby daughter like she was the most precious thing in the world. Emma chose that moment to let out a small cry, and Adrian immediately shifted into action, checking her diaper and reaching for a bottle from his bag. Watching him work with such natural competence, Camila found herself wondering what his story really was. How did a man who could clearly afford the best nanny's money could end up traveling alone with a baby in a snowstorm? Have you ever opened your door to a stranger and wondered if that single act of kindness could change everything? What would you have done in Camila's situation? Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories that remind us how love can bloom in the most unexpected places. The power went out completely just as Adrian finished feeding Emma her bottle. The house plunged into darkness except for the flickering candlelight Camila had prepared earlier, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Emma didn't seem bothered by the sudden change, content in her father's arms and drowsy from her feeding. Well, that settles it, Camila said, lighting 2 more candles. You're definitely staying the night. Even if your car was working, we can't see anything now. Adrian looked around the room, now transformed by candlelight into something warmer and more intimate than the modest space it had appeared to be under electric lighting. I have to admit, I can't remember the last time I was somewhere without electricity by choice. This wasn't exactly by choice, Camila laughed, settling back into her chair with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. But there's something peaceful about it, don't you think? No television, no phones buzzing, just the storm outside and quiet inside. Emma had fallen asleep in Adrian's arms, and he looked down at her with an expression so tender it made Camila's chest tight. She's so beautiful, she said softly. She has your eyes. Everyone says that, Adrian replied, his voice barely above a whisper so as not to wake the baby. I hope she gets more than just my eyes from me. I want her to have chances I never had growing up. Camila tilted her head, curious. What do you mean? You seem like you've had every opportunity. Adrian was quiet for so long that Camila thought he might not answer. Finally he spoke, still looking down at Emma. Money and opportunity aren't the same thing. I grew up in a house with every luxury you could imagine, but my parents were so focused on business and social status that I barely saw them. I was raised by nannies and boarding schools. I swore Emma would never feel that kind of loneliness. Is that why you're traveling with her yourself instead of having someone else bring her? Partly, Adrian admitted. I know it would be easier to have help, but I don't want to miss these moments. She changes so much every day, and I don't want to look back and realize someone else raised my daughter while I was busy making money. Camila felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the candles or her blanket. She'd met plenty of men who talked about family values, but few who actually lived them. That's really admirable, Adrian. She's lucky to have a father who puts her first. I haven't always been good at putting people first, Adrian said, and there was something heavy in his voice. I'm still learning. Before Camila could ask what he meant, Emma stirred and made a small sound. Adrian immediately stood and began a gentle swaying motion that clearly came from practice. She usually sleeps better if she's moving a little, he explained. Here, Camila said, rising from her chair. Let me show you to the spare room. It's small, but there's a comfortable chair by the window where you can sit with her if she needs it. She led him down a short hallway to a tiny bedroom that served as her office and occasional guest space. It wasn't much, just a single bed with a colorful quilt her grandmother had made, a small desk covered with community college textbooks, and a rocking chair that had been there when she moved in. This is perfect, Adrian said, settling into the rocking chair with Emma. Better than perfect, actually. Thank you. Camila lingered in the doorway, watching him rock his daughter in the candlelight. Can I ask you something? Of course. What happened to Emma's mother? If that's not too personal. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. Rebecca and I weren't married. We dated for about a year, and when she found out she was pregnant, she was clear that she wasn't ready to be a mother. She stayed through the pregnancy because I asked her to, but the day after Emma was born, she signed away her rights and left. I haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry, Camila said, meaning it. That must have been incredibly difficult. The hardest part wasn't losing Rebecca, Adrian said, continuing his gentle rocking. It was realizing that I had chosen someone who could walk away from her own child. It made me question my judgment about people, about everything really. Camila stepped further into the room, drawn by the honesty in his voice. But you didn't walk away. You could have, with your resources. You could have found someone else to raise her and visited on weekends. But you didn't. No, Adrian said simply. I didn't. She's my responsibility, my joy. I can't imagine my life without her now. Emma chose that moment to let out a small sigh of contentment, and both adults smiled. She knows she's safe with you, Camila observed. I hope so. Sometimes I worry that I'm not enough, that she needs more than I can give her. Like what? Adrian hesitated. A mother. A woman's perspective. I can change diapers and make bottles and read stories, but there are things about raising a daughter that I'm probably going to mess up. Camila pulled the desk chair over and sat down facing him. Can I tell you something? My father raised me mostly alone after my mother got sick when I was 12. She was in and out of hospitals for years before she passed, so Dad did everything. The cooking, the shopping, helping with homework, dealing with teenage drama. He worried constantly that he wasn't enough, that I was missing out on something because I didn't have a healthy mother around. Was he right? No, Camila said firmly. He was everything I needed because he loved me completely. He showed up for every school play, every soccer game, every broken heart. He taught me to be strong and independent, but also to be kind. The love is what matters, Adrian, not the gender of the person giving it. Adrian stopped rocking and looked at her directly. Thank you for saying that. I needed to hear it. Besides, Camila added with a small grin, you've got at least 12 years before you have to worry about teenage drama. By then you'll have figured out the rest. Adrian laughed, a real laugh that transformed his entire face. 12 years. That seems both very far away and terrifyingly soon. Emma had fallen into a deeper sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Adrian looked down at her and then back at Camila. Can I ask you something now? Fair's fair. What do you do? I noticed the textbooks on your desk. Camila felt heat creep up her neck. Her life probably seemed very small compared to his world of wealth and business. I work as a receptionist at a medical clinic during the day, and I'm taking night classes to become a medical assistant. It's not glamorous, but I like helping people and the healthcare field is stable. That's not unglamorous at all, Adrian said seriously. You're working toward a career that makes a difference while supporting yourself. That takes courage. More like necessity, Camila said with a self-conscious laugh. My parents didn't have college funds set aside. Everything I've achieved has been through working and student loans. Even more impressive then, Adrian said. Emma and I are lucky we found someone with such a strong work ethic and generous heart to help us tonight. Camila looked at him in the candlelight, holding his sleeping daughter, and felt something shift in her chest. There was something about this man that didn't match her preconceptions about wealthy people. He was humble, thoughtful, clearly devoted to his child. And the way he looked at her when he spoke, like her opinions and experiences mattered, was something she wasn't used to. "I should let you get some rest," she said, standing up. "Emma's probably going to be up early, and you'll want to check on getting your car fixed as soon as the storm passes." "Camila," Adrian called softly as she reached the doorway. "Thank you. Not just for the shelter but for listening. It's been a long time since I've talked to someone who didn't want something from me." She paused, considering his words. "What makes you think I don't want something from you?" Adrian studied her face in the flickering candlelight. "Because you haven't asked. Most people, the moment they realize who I am and what I do, they start positioning themselves. They want jobs or investments or introductions to other wealthy people. You haven't even asked what I do for work." "Should I?" Camila asked, genuinely curious now. "Only if you want to know." She thought about it for a moment. "I'm more interested in knowing what kind of father you are than what kind of businessman you are. And I think I already have my answer to that." Adrian's smile was soft and genuine. "Good night, Camila. Sweet dreams." "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, little Emma." As Camila made her way back to her own bedroom, she could hear Adrian's gentle voice starting a quiet lullaby behind her. She changed into her pajamas by candlelight, thinking about the unexpected turn her quiet evening had taken. When she'd woken up that morning, she never could have imagined that by bedtime she'd be sharing her home with a mysterious businessman and his baby daughter. Settling into her own bed, she listened to the storm still raging outside and the soft sounds of Adrian moving around the guest room. There was something about having them in her house that felt right, like puzzle pieces fitting together in a way that surprised her. But she reminded herself not to get too attached. Come morning, the storm would pass, his car would get fixed, and Adrian Campbell would return to whatever wealthy world he came from. This was just one night, one act of kindness between strangers. Nothing more. Even as she told herself that, though, she couldn't shake the memory of how he'd looked at her when she shared the story about her father, or the tenderness in his voice when he sang to Emma. Some connections, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, happened faster than others. Camila woke to the sound of a baby crying and morning light filtering through her bedroom window. The storm had passed sometime during the night, leaving behind the kind of pristine silence that only comes after heavy snow. She could hear Adrian's voice from the guest room, speaking in soothing tones to Emma. She pulled on her robe and padded to the kitchen, starting coffee and checking outside. Snow had piled up at least 2 feet deep, transforming her modest neighborhood into a winter wonderland. Adrian's car was completely buried, just a dark shape under a mountain of white. "Good morning," Adrian's voice came from behind her. She turned to see him in the kitchen doorway, Emma in his arms and his hair still rumpled from sleep. He'd changed into a fresh shirt from his bag, but it was wrinkled from traveling. Somehow, the imperfection made him seem more human, more approachable than he had the night before. "Good morning," Camila replied, noting how Emma's eyes immediately found hers and stayed there. "How did you two sleep?" "Better than I expected, actually." Emma only woke up once, and the rocking chair was perfect for getting her back down. Adrian moved into the kitchen, and Emma stretched out one tiny hand toward Camila. "I think someone wants to say good morning to you." Without thinking, Camila reached out to touch Emma's little fingers, and the baby immediately grasped her index finger with surprising strength. "Hello, beautiful girl," Camila cooed, and Emma responded with what might have been her first smile of the day. "She likes you," Adrian observed, moving to look out the window at the snow. "She's usually shy with new people, but she seems completely comfortable with you." "Babies can sense things adults miss sometimes," Camila said, gently moving her fingers so Emma could play with it. "They know who has good intentions." Adrian turned from the window with a rueful expression. "Well, it looks like we're not going anywhere soon. My car is completely buried and I doubt the roads are clear yet anyway. The city's usually pretty good about plowing the main streets, but it takes them a while to get to the residential areas," Camila said, starting to prepare Emma's bottle without being asked. "You probably won't be able to get out until this afternoon at the earliest." Instead of seeming frustrated by this news, Adrian looked almost relieved. "Then I guess we're imposing on your hospitality for a little longer." "It's not an imposition," Camila said firmly, testing the temperature of the formula on her wrist the way she'd seen her cousin do with her children. "Besides, I could use the company. Snow days can get pretty lonely when you're by yourself." Adrian accepted the bottle from her with a surprised look. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." And she had wanted to. There was something deeply satisfying about caring for Emma, about being useful to this little family unit that had appeared in her life. As Adrian fed Emma, Camila started making breakfast. She didn't have much, just eggs and toast and some fruit, but she found herself wanting to create something special for them. She scrambled the eggs with cheese and herbs, made thick-cut toast from the good bread she'd been saving, and arranged everything on her nicest plates. "You don't have to wait on us," Adrian protested as she set the plates on her small kitchen table. "I'm not waiting on you. I'm sharing breakfast with you. There's a difference." Camila sat down across from him, Emma now content in her father's lap, looking around at everything with curious eyes. Adrian took a bite and made an appreciative sound. "This is delicious. Thank you." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, Emma providing entertainment by grabbing at everything within reach and making small baby sounds at the sunlight streaming through the window. Camila found herself studying Adrian's face in the morning light. He looked younger somehow, less guarded than he had the night before. "Can I ask you something?" Camila said as she finished her eggs. "Sure. Last night you mentioned that you hope Emma gets chances you never had growing up. But you obviously had every material advantage. What chances did you miss?" Adrian set down his fork and looked at Emma, who was now playing with the buttons on his shirt. "The chance to feel like I mattered for who I was, not what I could achieve. My parents measured everything in terms of success and productivity. Love was conditional on performance. Good grades, athletic achievements, social connections, business accomplishments. I learned early that my worth was tied to what I could produce, not who I was as a person." Camila felt her heart clench. "That sounds incredibly lonely." It was. "I threw myself into work because that was the only way I knew how to measure my value. I built a successful company, made a lot of money, but I was empty inside. When Emma was born and I held her for the first time, I realized that I loved her completely just for existing. She didn't have to earn it or prove she deserved it. That's what I want her to always know." Emma chose that moment to look up at her father and reach for his face, her tiny palm pressing against his cheek. Adrian caught her hand and kissed it gently, and Camila felt tears prick at her eyes. "She already knows," Camila said softly. "Look at how secure she is with you, how completely she trusts you. You're already giving her what you didn't have." "I hope so. Sometimes I worry that I don't know how to show love in healthy ways because I never really learned." "Adrian," Camila said, leaning forward slightly, "you drove through a snowstorm with your baby because your father might need you. You've spent the last 12 hours putting Emma's needs ahead of your own comfort. You're learning her schedule, her preferences, her personality. That's love. That's exactly what it looks like." Adrian looked at her with such gratitude that it took her breath away. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make everything seem clearer, simpler. Like the answers were there all along and I just needed someone to point them out." Before Camila could respond, Emma began to fuss, and Adrian immediately shifted his attention to figuring out what she needed. "I think someone needs a diaper change," he said, standing up. "There's a changing pad in the diaper bag," Camila offered, but Adrian was already heading toward the living room with practiced efficiency. Camila cleaned up the breakfast dishes, listening to Adrian talk to Emma as he changed her diaper. His voice was patient and gentle, full of the kind of steady affection that children need to thrive. Whatever his concerns about his parenting abilities, it was clear to Camila that Emma was in excellent hands. When he returned to the kitchen, Emma was dressed in a fresh outfit, a bright green romper that made her dark eyes sparkle. "She's beautiful," Camila said, reaching out to smooth a curl away from Emma's forehead. The baby leaned into her touch and Camila felt something warm and protective bloom in her chest. "Would you like to hold her?" Adrian asked. "While I call about my car and check on my father?" Camila's hands were already reaching for Emma before she consciously decided to say yes. The baby came to her easily, settling into her arms as if she belonged there. Emma looked up at Camila with those serious dark eyes, then reached up to touch her face with curious fingers. "Hello, sweet girl," Camila murmured, automatically swaying slightly the way she'd seen Adrian do. "Are you going to keep me company while Daddy makes his phone calls?" Emma made a small cooing sound that Camila chose to interpret as agreement. Adrian watched this interaction with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between surprise and something deeper. "She really does like you," he said quietly. "I've never seen her take to someone so quickly." "Maybe she knows I like her too," Camila replied, bouncing Emma gently. The baby rewarded her with what was definitely a real smile this time, and Camila felt her heart melt completely. Adrian made his phone calls from the living room while Camila entertained Emma in the kitchen. She could hear fragments of his conversations talk about tow trucks and road conditions and hospital visits. When he returned, he looked both relieved and frustrated. "Good news and bad news," he said, reaching for Emma, who went to him willingly but kept looking back at Camila. Good news is that my father is stable. It was chest pains but not a heart attack. Bad news is that the earliest a tow truck can get here is tomorrow morning. The roads are still too dangerous and they're prioritizing emergencies. That's wonderful about your father, Camila said, genuinely relieved. And the car situation isn't bad news at all. You're welcome to stay as long as you need to. I can't ask you to put us up for another night. You're not asking. I'm offering. Again. Camila met his eyes directly. Adrian, I mean it. You and Emma are welcome here. Besides, look at her. She's completely content. Why disrupt that if you don't have to? As if to prove Camila's point, Emma let out a happy gurgle and clapped her hands together, a skill that was clearly new and exciting to her. Both adults laughed and Emma clapped again, delighted by their reaction. See, Camila said. She's already planning to stay. Adrian looked at his daughter, then at Camila, and something in his expression shifted. Are you sure? I don't want to overstay our welcome. You're not, Camila said simply. Trust me, if I wanted you to leave, you'd know it. I'm not good at hiding my feelings. What are your feelings? Adrian asked quietly. About us being here? Camila considered the question seriously, looking at Emma in Adrian's arms, at the way the morning light caught the snow outside her window, at the sense of rightness she felt having them in her small house. Honestly, it feels like you belong here. I know that probably sounds crazy since we just met, but there's something about this that feels meant to be. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, Emma contentedly playing with his tie between them. It doesn't sound crazy at all, he said finally. It feels the same way to me. By mid-afternoon, the snow had stopped completely, leaving behind a world that looked like it had been dusted with powdered sugar. Camila had bundled up and ventured outside to shovel her front walkway, while Adrian stayed inside with Emma, watching through the window and clearly wishing he could help. I feel terrible that you're doing all the work while we sit in here, he called through the storm door as she cleared the steps. You're holding a baby, Camila called back, pausing to catch her breath. That's work too. Besides, I'm used to this. Colorado winters require a certain amount of self-sufficiency. When she came back inside, stamping snow off her boots, she found Adrian on the floor with Emma, who was lying on a blanket kicking her legs and reaching for the colorful toys he'd produced from his seemingly endless supply of baby gear. The domestic scene made something warm unfurl in Camila's chest. She's got strong legs, Camila observed, settling down on the floor beside them. I bet she's going to be walking early. I hope not too early, Adrian said with a grin. I'm barely keeping up with her as it is. Emma turned her head at the sound of Camila's voice and immediately reached toward her. Without thinking, Camila scooped her up and settled her in her lap, where Emma began exploring the buttons on Camila's cardigan with intense concentration. Can I ask you something? Adrian said, his tone more serious now. Of course. Last night you mentioned that your mother was sick for a long time before she passed. Can I ask what happened? Camila's hand stilled on Emma's back. It wasn't a subject she talked about often, but something about Adrian's genuine concern made it easier to share. Cancer. She was diagnosed when I was 12 and it was a long battle. 7 years of treatments and remissions and relapses. Dad used to joke that we lived at the hospital more than we lived at home. That must have been incredibly difficult for a child. It was, but it also taught me a lot. About strength, about not taking time with people you love for granted, about finding joy in small moments even when everything else is falling apart. Camila looked down at Emma, who was now contentedly chewing on her own fist. Your daughter is lucky she has you to give her stability and love right from the start. Not all kids get that. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then reached over to brush a strand of hair away from Emma's face. Sometimes I wonder if I'm being selfish, keeping her with me all the time instead of letting her have a more normal childhood with other children and activities. She's 5 months old, Adrian. Right now, what she needs most is exactly what you're giving her. Consistent love, attention, security. The rest will come later. Camila bounced Emma gently, earning a delighted giggle. Besides, look at how happy she is. Does this look like a baby who's missing out on anything? No, Adrian admitted, watching his daughter with soft eyes. She does seem happy. Can I ask you something now? Camila said. Fair enough. What do you do for work? I mean, I can tell you're successful, but you've never actually said what your job is. Adrian's expression became guarded again, the way it had when he'd first mentioned people wanting things from him. I own a software company. We develop applications for healthcare systems, things that help doctors and hospitals manage patient records more efficiently. That sounds important, Camila said, genuinely interested. You're helping people even if you're not directly treating patients. That's how I like to think about it, Adrian replied, seeming to relax slightly. Though most people just hear software company and think about money and market share. Is it a big company? Adrian hesitated. Bigger than I ever expected it would be when I started it 8 years ago. We have offices in 12 cities now. Camila sensed there was more to the story, but she didn't push. Emma had grown heavy in her arms, clearly ready for another nap. Someone's getting sleepy, she observed. She usually goes down around this time, Adrian said, reaching for his daughter. I can take her. I don't mind, Camila said, standing carefully with Emma in her arms. Why don't you relax for a few minutes? You've been on duty since we got up. Before Adrian could protest, Camila carried Emma to the guest room and settled into the rocking chair. Emma's eyes were already drooping, and within minutes she was fast asleep against Camila's chest. The weight of the baby, the soft sound of her breathing, the complete trust she showed in allowing herself to fall asleep in a relative stranger's arms, all combined to create a moment of perfect peace. Camila found herself imagining what it would be like to do this every day, to be part of Emma's routine, to have a reason to come home to more than just an empty house and textbooks. The thought scared her with its intensity. She'd known this man and his daughter for less than 24 hours, and already she was picturing a future that included them both. She's really taken to you. Camila looked up to find Adrian standing in the doorway, watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. She's easy to love, Camila said softly, not wanting to wake the baby. Adrian stepped into the room and sat on the edge of the bed facing her. Can I tell you something? Of course. I've had nannies and babysitters help with Emma before, people with years of experience and excellent references. But I've never seen her respond to anyone the way she's responded to you. It's like she knows something I don't. Camila looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms. What do you think she knows? That you're good for us, Adrian said quietly. Both of us. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that neither of them was quite ready to address directly. Camila felt her cheeks warm, but she didn't look away from Adrian's steady gaze. I feel like I should tell you, Adrian continued, that my company isn't just successful. It's very successful. The kind of successful that changes everything about how people treat you, how they see you, what they expect from you. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know what you might be getting into if we... He paused, seeming to search for the right words. If this friendship develops into something more than just helping strangers in a storm. Camila considered his words carefully. Are you warning me about something specific? I'm worth about $40 million, Adrian said bluntly. My company went public 3 years ago, and the value has grown faster than I ever imagined. I'm telling you because I've learned that money changes how people see you, how they act around you, what they want from you. I need you to know what you're dealing with. Camila stared at him for a long moment, processing this information. $40 million. It was more money than she could really comprehend, enough to solve every financial problem she'd ever had with what would probably be pocket change to him. Okay, she said finally. Okay. Adrian looked surprised. That's it. What did you expect me to say? That I'm suddenly going to start treating you differently because you have money? Most people do. I'm not most people, Camila said firmly. The man I've gotten to know over the last day is someone who drives through snowstorms for family, who changes diapers at 3 a.m, who worries about being a good father, who makes his daughter laugh and holds her when she cries. That's who you are to me. The money doesn't change any of that. Adrian looked at her with something like wonder. You really mean that? I really do. Though I have to ask, if you're worth $40 million, why were you driving yourself through a snowstorm instead of taking a private jet or hiring a driver? Adrian actually laughed at that. Because I'm not completely disconnected from reality yet. The airports were closed due to the storm, and hiring a driver would have just put someone else at risk. Besides, I like driving. It's one of the few times I feel completely normal. Emma stirred in Camila's arms, making small sleepy sounds. Camila automatically began rocking again, and the baby settled back into deep sleep. There's something else, Adrian said, his voice more hesitant now. What? The medical bills on your coffee table. I noticed them last night and again this morning. They look like they're for ongoing treatment. Camila felt her stomach clench. She'd forgotten about those bills, had been so focused on her unexpected guests that her own problems had temporarily faded into the background. They're not for me, she said quietly. Your father? Yes. He was diagnosed with diabetes 2 years ago, and it's been getting progressively worse. He needs insulin that his insurance doesn't fully cover, and now he's developed some complications that require specialist care. I've been trying to help him manage the costs, but..." She trailed off, not wanting to burden Adrian with her problems. "But it's difficult on a receptionist's salary while you're also paying for school." "I'm managing," Camila said, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. "How much do you need?" Adrian asked directly. Adrian, no. "How much?" he repeated. "I'm not telling you that. This isn't why I helped you." "I know it's not," Adrian said gently. "That's exactly why I want to help you. You opened your door to strangers in a storm, you've taken care of Emma like she was your own child, you've been kinder to me than I have any right to expect. Let me help your father." Camila shook her head. "I can't accept that kind of money from someone I just met." "Why not?" Because it would change things between us. I'd always wonder if I owed you something, or if you thought I was with you because of what you could give me." "With me?" Adrian repeated, focusing on those two words. Camila realized what she'd implied and felt her cheeks burn. "I didn't mean, that is, I wasn't assuming." "But you were thinking about it," Adrian said softly. "About there being an us to consider." Camila looked down at Emma, sleeping so peacefully in her arms, then back at Adrian. "Yes," she admitted. "I was thinking about it." "So was I," Adrian said. "I've been thinking about it since last night when you told me the story about your father raising you. I've been thinking about how right this feels, having Emma respond to you the way she has, having someone to talk to who sees me as just a man instead of a bank account. But I need you to know that my feelings for you have nothing to do with guilt or gratitude or some kind of savior complex. I'm attracted to who you are, to your strength and kindness and the way you make everything seem possible. If I help your father, it's because I want to, because I can, and because no one should have to choose between paying rent and paying for medication." Emma made a small sound and opened her eyes, looking up at Camila with that serious expression that seemed to be her default. Then she smiled, that same radiant smile she'd been giving Camila all day, and reached up to touch her face. "She's trying to tell you something," Adrian said with a small smile. "What do you think she's saying?" "I think she's saying that sometimes good things happen to good people. And that it's okay to let them happen." Camila looked at this man who had appeared in her life like something out of a fairy tale, offering to solve her problems while asking for nothing in return except the chance to get to know her better. It should have felt too good to be true, too fast, too overwhelming. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "The bills total about $38,000, she said quietly. "Between what Dad owes already and what the treatments will cost over the next year." "Done," Adrian said immediately. "Just like that. Just like that. I'll transfer the money this afternoon." Tears pricked at Camila's eyes. "Adrian, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," he said, reaching over to touch Emma's hand where it rested against Camila's cheek. "Just let me take you and Emma out to dinner tomorrow night. Assuming my car gets fixed and the roads are clear." "Like a date?" "Like a date," Adrian confirmed. "If you want it to be." Camila looked at Emma, who was now wide awake and seemed to be following the conversation with interest, then at Adrian, who was watching her with hope and something deeper in his dark eyes. "I want it to be," she said. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp air that made the snow-covered world look like a postcard. Camila woke to the sound of voices outside and looked out her window to see a tow truck driver talking to Adrian beside his now visible car. She dressed quickly and went to the kitchen, where she found Emma in her bouncy seat on the table, happily chewing on a teething ring while keeping watch over the coffee maker. The domestic normalcy of it struck her again, how easily Adrian and his daughter had fit into her morning routine. "Good morning, beautiful girl," Camila said to Emma, who immediately broke into a smile and began bouncing excitedly in her seat. "Where's your daddy?" Outside with the tow truck. Adrian's voice came from behind her as he stepped through the front door, stamping snow off his boots. "Good news. The car starts fine, it was just stuck in the snow. The driver was able to pull it out and the roads are mostly clear now." Camila felt a pang of disappointment that surprised her with its intensity. "So you'll be able to leave today?" "If we want to," Adrian said carefully, hanging his coat on the back of a chair. "But I was hoping we could stay until this evening. I already called my father and he's doing much better. The doctors want to keep him for observation another day, but he's stable. And I was serious about taking you to dinner tonight, if the invitation still stands." "It stands," Camila said, relief flooding through her. She wasn't ready for them to leave yet, wasn't ready for her house to go back to being empty and quiet. Adrian moved to Emma and lifted her from her bouncy seat, earning a delighted squeal. What do you think, princess? Should we take Camila somewhere special for dinner? Emma responded by grabbing Adrian's nose and laughing, which both adults took as enthusiastic agreement. I have to warn you, Camila said, pouring coffee for both of them, I don't exactly have a closet full of fancy dresses. If you're thinking somewhere that requires a suit and tie. I was actually thinking somewhere more casual, Adrian said. There's a family restaurant about 20 minutes from here that I looked up online. They have high chairs and a kids menu, and the reviews say they're very welcoming to families with babies. The word families hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Camila felt her heart skip. That sounds perfect, she said. They spent the day in easy companionship, playing with Emma, talking about everything and nothing, slowly learning each other's habits and preferences. Adrian proved to be handy around the house, insisting on fixing a loose cabinet door that had been bothering Camila for months. She found herself watching him work, admiring the competent way he handled tools and the unconscious grace of his movements. You're very domestic for a billionaire, she teased as he tightened the last screw. 40 million is not a billion, Adrian corrected with a grin. And I lived alone for years before Emma came along. I learned to take care of things myself. Most wealthy people I've heard of just hire someone to do this stuff. Most wealthy people didn't grow up with my father, Adrian said, his expression growing more serious. He believed that a man should be self-sufficient, able to handle whatever life threw at him. It was one of the few things he taught me that I actually appreciated. Emma chose that moment to start fussing from her position in the portable playpen Adrian had set up in the living room. Both adults immediately moved toward her, but Adrian gestured for Camila to go first. She wants you, he said with a smile that didn't hide the wonder in his voice. She always wants you. Camila picked up Emma, who immediately settled against her chest with a contented sigh. I think she's just used to me now. Babies adapt quickly. It's more than that, Adrian said, watching them together. I've seen her with other people. She's polite, she tolerates being held, but she doesn't seek them out the way she does you. She doesn't light up when they walk into the room. Camila looked down at Emma, who was now playing with a strand of her hair, completely content. Maybe she knows I light up when she walks into the room too. Is that what this is? Adrian asked softly. This feeling? What feeling? Like something that was missing has finally clicked into place. Camila met his eyes across the small living room. Yes, she said simply. That's exactly what this is. By mid-afternoon, Camila found herself doing something she never would have imagined 2 days earlier, getting ready for a dinner date with a multimillionaire while his baby daughter napped in her guest room. The situation felt surreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's life. She stood in front of her small closet, surveying her limited options. She had exactly one dress that could be considered nice, a navy blue wrap dress she'd bought for her cousin's wedding 2 years ago. She pulled it out and held it up to herself in the mirror, hoping it would be appropriate for whatever restaurant Adrian had chosen. When she emerged from her bedroom, Adrian was sitting on the couch with Emma on his lap, both of them looking at something on his phone. He looked up when she entered the room and his expression made her cheeks warm. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you, Camila replied, smoothing the dress nervously. You clean up pretty well yourself. Adrian had changed into dark slacks and a blue button-down shirt that made his eyes look even darker. He looked polished and successful but somehow still approachable. Still like the man who had appeared on her doorstep in a snowstorm. Are you ready for this? He asked as he gathered Emma's diaper bag and car seat. Dinner? I think so. Not just dinner, Adrian said, pausing to look at her directly. This. Whatever this is becoming. Camila considered the question seriously. Was she ready to potentially fall for a man whose world was so different from hers? Was she ready to let herself care about a baby who might not be in her life permanently? Was she ready to risk her heart on something that felt too good to be true? Looking at Adrian holding Emma, both of them watching her with matching expressions of hope and affection, she realized that ready or not, she was already falling. I'm ready, she said. The restaurant Adrian had chosen was perfect. A family-owned Italian place with checkered tablecloths and the kind of warm atmosphere that made everyone feel welcome. The hostess cooed over Emma and brought a high chair without being asked, and their server was experienced enough with babies to keep their water glasses filled and be patient when Emma's needs interrupted the conversation. This is exactly right, Camila said as they settled into their booth, Emma happily gumming a piece of soft bread roll in her high chair. How did you find this place? I looked for restaurants that specifically mentioned being family-friendly, Adrian said. I wanted somewhere Emma would be comfortable, but also somewhere we could actually talk. And somewhere you wouldn't get recognized? Adrian paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. How did you know about that? I Googled you, Camila admitted, feeling heat creep up her neck. After you told me about your company, I was curious. There were several articles about you, some photos from business events. What did you think? Camila studied his face, noting the slight tension around his eyes. I thought you looked uncomfortable in most of the pictures. Like you were playing a role that didn't quite fit. That's remarkably accurate, Adrian said. I hate those events. All the networking and small talk and people trying to get something from you. But they're part of the business. Emma dropped her piece of bread and made a sound of dismay. Both Adrian and Camila immediately reached for the piece that had fallen on the table, their hands brushing as they both tried to help her. The contact sent a small shock through Camila, and she saw from Adrian's expression that he'd felt it too. I've got it, Camila said softly, tearing off a fresh piece of bread for Emma. You're so natural with her, Adrian observed, watching Camila help Emma get a good grip on the bread. It's like you've been doing this for years. I always wanted children, Camila said, then immediately felt embarrassed by the admission. I mean someday. When I'm more financially stable and with the right person. What would make someone the right person? Adrian asked quietly. Camila looked at Emma, who was now contentedly gnawing on her bread while looking around at the other diners with curious eyes. Someone who puts family first. Someone who's present, not just physically but emotionally. Someone who understands that love isn't something you earn, it's something you give freely. She looked up at Adrian. Someone like you. Adrian reached across the table and covered her hand with his. Camila, I need you to know something. What? I'm falling for you. Hard and fast and in ways that probably don't make sense given how little time we've known each other. But I can't ignore what this feels like, what Emma's reaction to you means, what it means that for the first time in years I don't want to be anywhere except exactly where I am right now. Camila felt her breath catch. Adrian? I know it's complicated. I know my life comes with challenges and pressures that you didn't sign up for. But I also know that I've never felt as at peace as I have in your house these past 2 days. You and Emma together, it feels like the family I always wanted but never thought I'd find. Emma chose that moment to look directly at Camila and clap her hands together, breadcrumbs flying everywhere. Both adults laughed, and the tension of the serious moment dissolved into something warmer and more natural. I'm falling for you too, Camila said quietly. Both of you. And it scares me because I don't want to get attached to something that might not be permanent. What if it could be permanent? Adrian asked. What if we could figure out how to make this work? How would we make it work? Your life is board meetings and business trips. Mine is medical classes and helping people who can barely afford to pay their bills. We live in completely different worlds. But we don't have to, Adrian said. Money gives you choices, Camila. It doesn't have to separate us. It could give us the freedom to build whatever kind of life we want. Emma had finished her bread and was now reaching toward Camila, making small demanding sounds. Camila lifted her from the high chair and settled her on her lap, where Emma immediately relaxed and began playing with the buttons on Camila's dress. Look at her, Adrian said softly. She's completely content with you. She's never been that relaxed with anyone except me. She's an easy baby to love, Camila said, smoothing Emma's dark curls. So is her father, Adrian said, his voice barely above a whisper. Camila met his eyes across the table, Emma warm and solid in her arms, and felt something shift into place in her chest. Whatever fears she had about their different backgrounds, whatever concerns about moving too fast, they all faded in the face of this simple truth. She was already in love with both of them. So is her father, she agreed. The drive back to Camila's house was quiet, Emma having fallen asleep in her car seat after the excitement of dinner. Camila found herself stealing glances at Adrian as he drove, noting the relaxed set of his shoulders, the small smile that seemed to have taken permanent residence on his face. Thank you for tonight, she said as he pulled into her driveway. Thank you for saying yes, Adrian replied, turning to look at her in the dim light from the dashboard. For saying yes to all of this, really. They carried a sleeping Emma inside and got her settled in the guest room without waking her. Camila found herself moving through these domestic routines with Adrian as if they'd been doing it for years rather than days. There was something deeply satisfying about working together to care for Emma, about the quiet communication that had developed between them. Coffee? Camila offered as they tiptoed out of Emma's room. Please. They settled on the couch with their mugs, sitting closer than they had before, the weight of the evening's conversations creating a new intimacy between them. Can I ask you something? Camila said, tucking her feet under her and turning to face him. Always. What happens next? I mean, practically speaking. You live in Denver, I assume. You have a business to run, responsibilities. I have work and school and my father to think about. Even if we both want this to continue, how do we make it work? Adrian set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. I've been thinking about that. And I have some ideas if you're open to hearing them. I'm listening. First, the distance isn't as much of an issue as you might think. My company has been moving toward remote work anyway, and I have excellent managers who can handle day-to-day operations. I could easily work from here a few days a week, or you could come to Denver. With Emma, I'm already traveling less than I used to. Camila nodded, encouraging him to continue. Second, your school situation. You're taking night classes to become a medical assistant, right? There are accelerated programs that could get you certified faster, and I could help with the tuition costs. Adrian? Hear me out, he said gently. I'm not trying to buy you or change your life plans. I'm trying to remove obstacles that might keep us apart. You want to work in healthcare and that's admirable. Let me help you get there faster and with less financial stress. And what about my father? I already told you I'd handle his medical expenses. I meant that. But more than that, if we're serious about building a life together, then your father is part of that life. I'd want to get to know him to make sure he's taken care of. Camila stared at him, overwhelmed by the generosity and thoughtfulness of his offer. You've really thought this through. I told you I'm falling hard. When I care about something, I plan for it. What about Emma? Camila asked. This affects her too. What if she gets attached to me and then things don't work out between us? Adrian's expression grew serious. That's the biggest risk, you're right. But Camila, look at how she responds to you. I've never seen her bond with anyone the way she's bonded with you. I think she needs you in her life. I think we both do. Emma chose that moment to make a small sound from the guest room, the kind of noise that meant she was stirring but not fully awake yet. Both adults immediately went quiet, waiting to see if she would settle back down or need attention. After a few moments of silence, Adrian continued in a lower voice. I know this is fast. I know it probably seems crazy to make life-changing decisions based on 3 days together. But I've learned not to waste time when something feels right. Life is unpredictable. Good things are rare. When you find them, you hold on. Camila thought about her mother, about all the plans her parents had made for the future that cancer had stolen from them. About the years her father had spent alone after her mother died, never finding anyone else who made him feel complete. About her own careful, cautious approach to relationships that had left her alone at 26 with nothing but good intentions and student loans. You're right, she said quietly. Good things are rare. So what do you think? Are you willing to see where this goes? Camila looked around her small living room, imagining it filled with Emma's toys and laughter, with Adrian's presence and the sense of family she'd been missing since her mother died. She thought about the way Emma reached for her, the way Adrian looked at her like she was something precious, the way she felt when the three of them were together. I think, she said carefully, that I'd like to try. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I finish my medical assistant program. Even if you help with tuition, I want to complete what I started. I need to know I can support myself. Agreed. What else? Second, we take this slowly with Emma. I don't want her calling me mommy or anything like that until we're sure this is permanent. She's already been abandoned by one woman in her life. Adrian's jaw tightened at the reminder of Rebecca, but he nodded. That's fair. What else? Third, I want to meet your father. If we're going to be together, I want to understand where you came from, what shaped you. That might be challenging, Adrian said carefully. My father isn't an easy man. He's very focused on success and status. He might not understand what I see in. He stopped himself. In someone like me? Camila finished. Someone without money or connections or the right background. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Adrian ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. My father judges everything by net worth and social position. It's not right and it's not how I see the world, but it's who he is. I don't want him to make you feel like you're not good enough because you are. You're better than good enough. Camila felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. I can handle difficult people, Adrian. I work in healthcare, remember? I deal with scared, angry, demanding people every day. But if we're going to build a life together, I need to know your family. The good and the bad. Okay, Adrian said after a moment. But I get to prepare him first. And if he says anything that hurts you, we leave immediately. Deal. Is that all your family? Just your father? My mother passed away 5 years ago. It's just me and him and we're not particularly close. Emma and I don't have much family support, which is part of why this," he gestured between them, "means so much to me." Emma made another sound from the guest room, louder this time. Adrian started to get up, but Camila touched his arm. "Let me," she said. She found Emma lying awake in her portable crib, looking around the room with curious eyes. When she saw Camila, she immediately reached up with both arms, making happy sounds. "Hello, sweet girl," Camila whispered, lifting Emma carefully. "Did you have a good nap?" Emma snuggled against Camila's shoulder, completely content. Camila carried her back to the living room, where Adrian was waiting with a bottle already prepared. "You're getting good at anticipating her needs," Camila observed, settling into the rocking chair with Emma. "I'm learning," Adrian said, handing her the bottle. "Though I think she's more content with you feeding her than with me." It was true. Emma took the bottle eagerly but kept her eyes fixed on Camila's face, one tiny hand resting against Camila's collarbone. The trust and affection in that small gesture made Camila's heart ache with love. "Adrian," she said softly, not wanting to wake Emma now that she was drinking peacefully, "I want you to know that whatever happens between us, I will never abandon Emma. Even if things don't work out romantically, if she needs me, I'll be there for her. I promise you that." Adrian's eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. "Do you know what that means to me? After what Rebecca did. I know what it's like to lose a parent," Camila said simply. "I would never do that to a child." They sat in comfortable silence as Emma finished her bottle, both lost in their own thoughts about the future they were tentatively building together. Finally, Emma's eyes began to droop again, and Camila carried her back to bed. When she returned to the living room, Adrian was standing by the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, joining him. "I was thinking about timing," he said, not turning away from the window. 2 days ago, I was a single father focused entirely on work and Emma. I had no room in my life for anyone else, no interest in risking the stability we'd built together. And then a snowstorm forced me to knock on the door of the one woman who could change everything. Do you believe in fate?" Camila asked. "I'm starting to," Adrian replied, finally turning to look at her. "What about you?" Camila thought about all the small decisions and circumstances that had led to this moment. Her choice to rent this particular house, Adrian's decision to drive himself instead of waiting for better weather, his car breaking down in front of her door specifically. "I think some things are meant to happen," she said. "And I think fighting them only makes you miserable." Adrian stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. "I don't want to fight this anymore," he said quietly. "Neither do I," Camila whispered. He reached up to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. "May I kiss you?" Instead of answering with words, Camila rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as they both gave in to the attraction that had been building between them since that first night. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Adrian rested his forehead against hers, his hands still framing her face. "This is really happening," he said, sounding almost surprised. "This is really happening," Camila agreed. From the guest room came the soft sound of Emma stirring again, and they both smiled. "I should probably get some sleep," Adrian said reluctantly. "Emma will be up early, and I want to call my father in the morning to let him know we're coming to visit." "Are you nervous about that conversation?" "Terrified," Adrian admitted. "Not about telling him about you, but about how he might react. I don't want him to ruin this before it has a chance to really begin." Camila took his hands in hers. "Whatever he says, whatever he thinks, it doesn't change what's happening between us. This is our choice, our life. Don't let anyone else's opinions overshadow that." Adrian brought her hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles gently. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Camila corrected. "Now go get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." As they said goodnight and Adrian disappeared into the guest room, Camila found herself already missing his presence in the living room. 3 days ago, she would have laughed if someone had told her she'd be planning a future with a millionaire and his baby daughter. Now she couldn't imagine any other future making sense. Change, she reflected as she got ready for bed, sometimes came like a storm. Sudden, overwhelming, reshaping everything in its path. But sometimes, if you were very lucky, it came bearing gifts. The morning brought bright sunshine and the sound of Adrian on the phone with his father. Camila could hear fragments of the conversation from the kitchen as she made breakfast. Adrian's voice diplomatic but firm. "Yes, Dad, I'm bringing someone I'd like you to meet." No, it's not Rebecca. Her name is Camila Rodriguez. Dad, please just... Yes, I understand your concerns, but... Emma was in her bouncy seat on the kitchen table, babbling happily at the sunlight streaming through the window. She seemed completely oblivious to the tension in her father's voice from the other room. What do you think, sweet girl? Camila asked her quietly. Think your grandfather is going to like me? Emma responded with a delighted squeal and a vigorous bouncing session that made Camila laugh despite her nerves. Adrian appeared in the kitchen doorway, his phone call apparently finished, looking frustrated and tired. That bad? Camila asked gently. He wants to meet you, which I suppose is progress. But he also spent 20 minutes lecturing me about the importance of appropriate matches and being careful about women who might be after something. Adrian sat down heavily at the table and rubbed his temples. I told him you're nothing like that, but he insists on making his own judgment. Maybe that's for the best, Camila said, bringing him a cup of coffee and settling into the chair beside him. I'd rather he be skeptical and then change his mind than have him pretend to like me for your sake. You're not nervous? Terrified, Camila admitted with a small laugh. But I've dealt with difficult people before. And Adrian, if he can't see that you're happy, that Emma adores me, that I care about both of you for who you are and not what you have, then that's his loss. Adrian reached over and took her hand. What did I do to deserve you? You showed up on my doorstep in a snowstorm with the most beautiful baby in the world, Camila said, looking at Emma, who was now trying to grab her own feet. You made it impossible not to fall in love with both of you. Before Adrian could respond, Emma let out a particularly loud squeal of delight, having successfully caught her own foot. Both adults turned to watch her, and the moment of levity broke some of the tension. We should probably get going soon, Adrian said, checking his watch. I told my father we'd be there by noon, and the drive to the hospital will take about an hour. I should change, Camila said, looking down at her casual jeans and sweater. What should I wear to meet your father? Adrian considered this seriously. Something that makes you feel confident. He's going to judge you no matter what you wear, so you might as well be comfortable. Camila opted for her one good pair of dress pants and a forest green blouse that her cousin had always said brought out her eyes. She kept her makeup simple and pulled her hair back in a low ponytail. When she emerged from her bedroom, Adrian was getting Emma dressed in a bright red dress with tiny white flowers. She looks beautiful, Camila said, smoothing a curl away from Emma's forehead. So do you, Adrian replied, looking at her with such warmth that she felt her cheeks heat. The drive to Denver passed quickly, filled with easy conversation and Emma's happy babbling from the back seat. As they got closer to the hospital, though, Camila could feel tension creeping back into Adrian's shoulders. Tell me about your father, she said as they pulled into the hospital parking garage. What should I expect? Adrian turned off the engine and sat back in his seat. Richard Campbell is a self-made man who built a construction company from nothing into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. He's intelligent, demanding, and has very specific ideas about success and social status. He thinks money equals worth, and he judges people based on what they can contribute to his vision of success. Sounds charming, Camila said dryly. He's not a bad man, Adrian said quickly. He provided for our family, worked hard to give me opportunities. But he's never understood that some things matter more than financial gain. When my mother was dying, he spent more time at business meetings than at her bedside because he said someone had to keep the family fortune secure. Emma made a small sound from her car seat, and both adults turned to check on her. She was wide awake, looking around at the concrete walls of the parking garage with curious eyes. Ready? Adrian asked, though it was clear he wasn't entirely ready himself. Ready? Camila said with more confidence than she felt. Richard Campbell's private hospital room was on the top floor, with large windows overlooking the city. The man lying in the bed was clearly Adrian's father, sharing the same dark eyes and strong jawline, though his hair was completely silver and his face was lined with age and what looked like permanent disapproval. Dad, Adrian said, entering the room with Emma in his arms and Camila beside him. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here, Richard said, his eyes immediately moving to Camila with undisguised assessment. And you must be Miss Rodriguez. Yes, sir. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Campbell. Adrian told me you were feeling better. Did he now? Richard's tone was neutral, giving nothing away. And what exactly did my son tell you about me? Camila felt Adrian tense beside her, but she met Richard's gaze directly. He told me that you're a successful businessman who built something significant from nothing. He also told me that you're protective of your family and want the best for Adrian and Emma. Diplomatic answer, Richard observed. Please sit down. Both of you. Adrian settled into one of the visitors' chairs, Emma on his lap, while Camila took the other chair. Emma immediately looked around the room with interest, then focused on her grandfather with the serious expression she wore when meeting new people. She's grown, Richard said, his voice softening slightly as he looked at his granddaughter. She changes every day, Adrian replied. She started clapping and trying to sit up on her own. As if summoned by the conversation, Emma clapped her hands together and made a happy sound. Richard's stern expression cracked slightly, showing a hint of grandfatherly pride. Smart girl, he said approvingly. Then his attention returned to Camila. Adrian tells me you work in healthcare. I'm a receptionist at a medical clinic, and I'm studying to become a medical assistant, Camila replied honestly. And what are your long-term goals? Career aspirations. Camila could feel Adrian's tension radiating across the space between their chairs, but she kept her voice steady. I want to work in patient care, helping people navigate the healthcare system and providing support during difficult times. Eventually, I'd like to specialize in helping families dealing with chronic illnesses. Noble, Richard said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely impressed by nobility. And what do you think of my son's business? I think he's built something that helps people while being financially successful. That seems like an ideal combination. And you're not interested in the financial success part? Camila felt a flash of irritation at the implication. Mr. Campbell, with respect, I didn't even know Adrian's last name when I opened my door to him during the snowstorm. I helped him because he had a baby and needed shelter, not because I knew anything about his bank account. Anyone can claim that after the fact. Dad, Adrian said warningly, but Camila held up a hand. No, it's okay. She looked directly at Richard. You're right to be protective of your son and granddaughter. Emma has already been abandoned by one woman who couldn't handle the responsibility of caring for her. If I were in your position, I'd be suspicious too. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly, clearly not having expected such directness. But I need you to understand something, Camila continued. I fell in love with Emma first. The moment I saw her in Adrian's arms in that storm, something in my heart just clicked. And then I fell in love with the man who was clearly devoted to her, who put her needs first, who worried about being a good father. The money is just money, Mr. Campbell. It doesn't make Adrian a better person or a worse one. It's just a fact about his life. Pretty words, Richard said. But money changes everything. It brings pressure, expectations, people who want things from you. How do I know you won't decide it's too complicated and disappear like Rebecca did? Emma chose that moment to reach toward Camila, making small demanding sounds. Without thinking, Camila stood and took her from Adrian, settling her on her lap where Emma immediately relaxed and began playing with the buttons on Camila's blouse. Because, Camila said, looking down at Emma's trusting face, I already promised her I wouldn't. And I don't break promises to children. Richard watched this interaction carefully, noting how naturally Emma settled with Camila, how comfortable she seemed. She doesn't usually take to strangers that easily. I'm not a stranger to her anymore, Camila said simply. I've been taking care of her for the past few days while we were snowed in together. She knows me. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize what it really means to be part of this family? Camila looked at Adrian, who was watching her with a mixture of love and anxiety, then back at Richard. Mr. Campbell, I grew up watching my father care for my dying mother for 7 years. I know what commitment looks like, what it costs, what it's worth. I'm not afraid of difficult times or complicated situations. I'm afraid of missing out on the chance to be part of something beautiful because I was too scared to try. Emma had found Camila's necklace and was examining it with intense concentration. The image of the young woman holding his granddaughter so naturally, speaking about commitment and love with such quiet conviction, seemed to give Richard pause. Tell me about your family, he said, his tone less aggressive now. My father raised me mostly alone after my mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 12. He worked construction during the day and took care of her at night. He taught me that family means showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. My mother taught me that love isn't something you earn, it's something you give freely. Your father worked construction? Yes, sir. Rodriguez Construction, a small operation but honest work. Richard's expression shifted slightly. I know Rodriguez Construction. Carlos Rodriguez. Camila blinked in surprise. Yes, that's my father. You know him? We did some subcontracting work together about 15 years ago. Good man, reliable, fair in his dealings. How is he doing? He's struggling with diabetes complications, but he's managing. Camila didn't mention the medical bills, not wanting to seem like she was asking for sympathy or help. Carlos Rodriguez's daughter, Richard mused, looking at her with new interest. He talked about you during those jobs. Said you were his pride and joy, working hard in school, taking care of your sick mother. He said that. Camila felt her eyes well up slightly. Many times. He was very proud of you. Richard was quiet for a moment, then looked at Adrian. Son, can I speak with Miss Rodriguez privately for a few minutes? Adrian looked uncertain. Dad, if you're going to interrogate her further? I'm not going to interrogate anyone, Richard said with a slight smile. I just want to have a conversation without you hovering protectively. Adrian looked at Camila, who nodded. It's okay. Emma and I will be fine. After Adrian reluctantly left the room, Richard gestured for Camila to pull her chair closer to his bed. Emma was now drowsing in her arms, comfortable and secure. Miss Rodriguez. Camila, may I speak frankly? Please. When Adrian called me yesterday, I was prepared to dislike you. I thought you were another Rebecca, someone who saw dollar signs instead of the man and the baby. I was ready to do whatever it took to protect them from being hurt again. Camila waited, not sure where this was heading. But watching you with Emma, hearing you talk about your parents, knowing you're Carlos's daughter, I think I may have been wrong. What changed your mind? Richard smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she'd seen from him. Emma. That little girl has been cautious around strangers since Rebecca left. She's polite but distant with everyone except Adrian. But look at her with you. Camila looked down at Emma, who had fallen asleep in her arms, one tiny fist curled around her finger. She trusts you completely, Richard continued. And Emma is an excellent judge of character. If she loves you, there's probably a good reason. I love her too, Camila said softly. Both of them. I can see that. The question is, are you prepared for what loving them means? Adrian's life isn't just board meetings and business trips. There are social obligations, media attention sometimes, people who will judge you and find you lacking simply because you didn't grow up wealthy. Can you handle that? Camila considered his question seriously. I don't know, she said honestly. I've never dealt with media attention or high society events. But I know I can handle judgment and criticism if it means protecting this family. And I know I'd rather face those challenges with Adrian than face any future without him and Emma. Richard nodded approvingly. That's a mature answer. And honest, which I appreciate. He paused, then continued. Adrian told me you're having financial difficulties with your father's medical care. Camila stiffened. He offered to help, but that's not why I'm with him. I know it's not. But Camila, if you're going to be part of this family, then your problems become our problems. That's what families do. They help each other. I don't need charity. It's not charity, Richard said firmly. It's investment. I'm investing in my son's happiness and my granddaughter's future. If helping your father keeps you in their lives, then it's the best money I'll ever spend. Emma stirred in Camila's arms and opened her eyes, looking up at Camila with that serious expression before breaking into a smile that transformed her entire face. Richard watched this interaction and chuckled. She definitely knows her own mind, that one. She gets that from her father, Camila said with a smile. And probably her grandfather, Richard admitted ruefully. Camila, I'm going to be direct with you one more time. I think you're good for Adrian, and I think you're exactly what Emma needs. But if you ever hurt them, if you ever make Emma go through another abandonment, I will make your life very difficult. Do you understand? Instead of being offended by the threat, Camila felt a surge of respect for this man who was willing to be the villain if it meant protecting his family. I understand, Mr. Campbell. And I appreciate that you care enough about them to threaten me. Richard laughed, a real laugh that made him look years younger. You're definitely Carlos's daughter. He always had that same direct way of speaking. Emma had awakened fully and was now looking around the room with interest, making small babbling sounds. She spotted her grandfather and reached toward him with both hands. I think someone wants to visit with you, Camila said, standing and carefully transferring Emma to Richard's arms. Richard's stern expression completely melted as he held his granddaughter, and Emma rewarded him with delighted clapping and happy squeals. Hello, beautiful girl, he said softly. Grandpa missed you. What do you think makes a family? Is it blood, or is it the people who choose to love and protect each other? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe for more heartwarming stories about love, second chances, and the families we build along the way. At that moment, Adrian returned to the room, stopping short at the sight of his father holding Emma while chatting easily with Camila. Everything okay in here? He asked cautiously. Better than okay, Richard said, looking up at his son with Emma babbling happily in his arms. I was just getting to know Camila better. And I was thinking. Oh no, Adrian said with mock dread. You're thinking. That's never good. Very funny, Richard replied. I was thinking that if you're serious about this young woman, and if she's serious about you, then perhaps it's time to make some changes. What kind of changes? Richard looked at Camila, then at Emma, then at his son. The kind that put family first. Starting with me getting out of this hospital so I can spend more time with my granddaughter and get to know the woman who's made my son happier than I've seen him in years. Adrian stared at his father in amazement. Dad, are you saying? I'm saying welcome to the family, Camila Rodriguez. If you'll have us. Emma chose that moment to clap her hands together and laugh, as if she approved of her grandfather's decision. Camila felt tears prick at her eyes as she looked at this man who had gone from suspicious interrogator to protective family patriarch in the space of an hour. I'd be honored to be part of this family, Mr. Campbell. Richard, he corrected with a smile. Family calls me Richard. And Camila? Yes. Thank you for saving my son and granddaughter from that storm. In more ways than one. The drive home from the hospital was filled with a lightness that hadn't been there on the way in. Emma was babbling contentedly in her car seat, and Adrian seemed to have shed years of tension after his father's unexpected approval. I can't believe that went so well, he said as they pulled into Camila's driveway. I was prepared for a disaster, and instead my father basically adopted you. Your father loves you and Emma, Camila said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Once he realized I wasn't a threat to your happiness, he was actually very easy to talk to. He likes you, Adrian said with wonder in his voice. My father, who has never approved of any woman I've dated, actually likes you. They carried Emma and her gear back into the house, and Camila was struck by how natural it felt, how right it seemed to be doing this domestic routine with Adrian. 3 days ago, her house had felt empty and quiet. Now it felt like home. Camila, Adrian said after they'd gotten Emma settled with her toys in the living room. We should talk about what happens next. Practically, I mean. You mean like where we go from here? Exactly. I don't want to pressure you, but I also don't want to lose this. What we've built these past few days, it matters to me. It matters to Emma. Camila settled onto the couch beside him, watching Emma explore a set of colorful rings with intense baby concentration. It matters to me too. But Adrian, I need to know that this is real, that it's not just the intensity of the situation making us both feel things that might not last. How do we know that? Time, Camila said simply. Real life. Seeing how we handle normal stress and everyday challenges, not just emergency situations. Adrian nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. So what do you suggest? I suggest we take this one step at a time. You go back to your regular life in Denver, I continue with work and school here. We see each other on weekends, talk every day, let Emma get used to having me around gradually. And if it works? If we find that this is as real as it feels right now. Camila looked at Emma, who had discovered that the rings made noise when she banged them together and was delighting in this new skill. Then we figure out the next step. I can work with that, Adrian said. But Camila, I want you to know that I'm already sure. I know it's fast, I know it seems impossible, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Adrian? I'm not asking you to feel the same way yet, he said quickly. I'm just telling you where I stand. I love you. I love the way you care for Emma, the way you make me feel like the best version of myself, the way you see family as something worth fighting for. Whatever time you need to be sure, I'll wait. Camila felt her heart squeeze tight in her chest. What if I'm not worth waiting for? That's impossible, Adrian said, reaching over to touch her face gently. You're worth everything. Emma had abandoned her rings and was now crawling toward them with determination, clearly wanting attention from her favorite adults. Adrian scooped her up and settled her between them on the couch, where she immediately reached for both of them, as if wanting to keep them connected. Smart girl, Camila murmured, taking one of Emma's hands while Adrian held the other. She knows what she wants. She gets that from her father, Adrian said with a grin. They spent the rest of the afternoon in domestic bliss, playing with Emma, making dinner together, talking about everything and nothing. As evening approached, Camila felt a familiar sadness creeping in. This perfect bubble they'd created was about to burst, and real life was going to intrude. I should probably head back to Denver tonight, Adrian said as if reading her thoughts. I have meetings tomorrow, and Emma's schedule is already disrupted enough. Of course, Camila said, trying to keep the disappointment out of her voice. You have responsibilities. Camila, look at me. She met his eyes, seeing understanding and something deeper there. "This isn't goodbye," he said firmly. "This is, see you soon. I'll call you tonight when I get Emma settled and we'll talk tomorrow. And I'm coming back Friday evening if you'll have us." "For the weekend?" "For as many weekends as you'll let us. Until you're ready for something more permanent." The word permanent sent a thrill through Camila that she tried to hide. Emma might get tired of all the traveling. Emma loves car rides and she loves you. Trust me, this won't be a hardship for her. As if to prove his point, Emma crawled over to Camila and pulled herself up using Camila's legs, then looked up at her with such trust and affection that Camila felt her resolve weaken. "Okay," she said softly. "Friday evening sounds perfect." The goodbye was harder than Camila had expected. Emma seemed to sense that something was happening and clung to Camila with unusual persistence, making small distressed sounds when Adrian tried to put her in her car seat. "She doesn't want to leave," Adrian observed, looking torn. "She'll be okay once you get on the road," Camila said, though her own heart was breaking a little as she kissed Emma's forehead. "Won't you, sweet girl? You'll be back Friday to see me." Emma looked at Camila with those serious dark eyes, then reached out and patted her cheek gently as if offering comfort. "I think she's telling you she'll miss you too," Adrian said softly. After they left, Camila's house felt impossibly empty and quiet. She wandered from room to room, noticing all the little signs of their presence that remained. Emma's blanket still draped over the back of the rocking chair. Adrian's coffee cup still in the sink. The faint scent of Emma's baby lotion lingering in the guest room. She was just settling down with her textbooks when her phone rang. Adrian's name appeared on the screen and she answered immediately. "Hi," she said, unable to keep the smile out of her voice. "Hi yourself. Emma wanted me to call and tell you good night. Is she okay? She seemed upset when you left. She cried for about 10 minutes, then fell asleep. I think she was just confused about leaving you behind. Poor baby. I hated seeing her upset. Camila, can I tell you something? Always. Watching you say goodbye to Emma tonight, seeing how much it hurt you to let her go, that's when I knew for certain that you love her. Really love her, not just because she's my daughter." Camila felt tears prick at her eyes. "Of course I love her. How could I not? Rebecca never looked upset to leave her behind. Not once." "Adrian, I'm not Rebecca." "I know. That's why I'm falling so hard for you." They talked for another hour about everything and nothing, neither wanting to end the connection. Finally, Camila forced herself to say goodnight, knowing they both needed sleep. But as she lay in her bed later, staring at the ceiling, she realized that sleep was going to be elusive. For 3 days, she'd had purpose beyond her own small concerns. She'd had a family to care for, people who needed her, a reason to wake up excited about the day ahead. Now she was back to her regular life and it felt smaller somehow. Lonelier. Like she'd gotten a taste of what life could be like with the right people, and everything else paled in comparison. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Adrian. "Sweet dreams. Emma and I are already counting the days until Friday." Camila smiled in the darkness and typed back, "Me too. Drive safely tomorrow." Another message appeared immediately, "I love you." Camila stared at those 3 words on her screen, her heart pounding. She thought about everything that had happened, everything she felt, everything she hoped for. Then she typed back, "I love you too." It was true. Despite all her cautions about taking things slowly, despite her fears about moving too fast, she was already completely in love with Adrian Campbell and his daughter. The storm had passed, but it had left behind something beautiful in its wake. Something worth building a future on. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt both natural and surreal. Adrian would arrive Friday evenings with Emma and enough baby gear to suggest he was moving in permanently, though he always loaded it all back into his car Sunday nights. They spent their weekends like a real family, taking Emma to the park when the weather was nice, cooking dinner together, establishing routines that made Camila's small house feel like the center of the universe. During the week, they talked every day, long conversations that ranged from Adrian's business challenges to Camila's experiences in her medical classes. Emma had apparently learned to recognize Camila's voice over the phone and would squeal with delight whenever Adrian switched to video calls so she could see her. "She misses you during the week," Adrian told Camila during one of their Thursday evening calls. "She keeps crawling to the front door and looking at it expectantly. She's just confused about the routine," Camila said, though the thought of Emma looking for her made her chest tight with emotion. "Babies like consistency. It's not just confusion, Camila. She knows you're supposed to be here." Camila was getting ready for another weekend with them when her phone rang Friday afternoon. Adrian's name appeared on the screen, but when she answered, his voice sounded strange. Tets. Camila, we have a problem. Her heart immediately jumped to the worst possibilities. Is Emma okay? Are you hurt? We're both fine physically. But I got a call from my lawyer this morning. Rebecca's back. Camila sank down onto her couch, feeling like the air had been knocked out of her lungs. What do you mean back? She wants to see Emma. She's claiming she made a mistake giving up her parental rights, that she was suffering from postpartum depression and wasn't thinking clearly. Her lawyer is suggesting she might try to regain custody. Can she do that? Legally? My lawyer says it's complicated. She voluntarily terminated her rights, but if she can prove she was mentally incapacitated when she did it, there might be grounds for her to challenge the decision. Adrian's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Camila, I can't lose Emma. And I can't let her be hurt by another person who might decide she's too inconvenient to keep around. Where are you now? Still in Denver meeting with lawyers? I don't know if I should bring Emma to you this weekend or keep her here until this gets resolved. Camila didn't hesitate. Bring her here. Whatever's happening, we'll face it together. Camila, you don't understand. This could get messy. Court battles, media attention, investigation into Emma's living situation. They're going to look at everyone in her life, including you. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for whatever it takes to protect Emma. Even if it means our relationship becomes public? Even if reporters start digging into your background, your family, your finances? Camila thought about her quiet life, her modest house, her father's medical struggles. The idea of having all of that scrutinized by strangers was terrifying. But the thought of Emma being taken away from the father who loved her completely, or worse, being caught in a custody battle between parents who couldn't put her needs first, was even more terrifying. Adrian, Emma needs stability and people who love her unconditionally. If I can provide that, then yes, I'm prepared for whatever comes with it. She heard him take a shaky breath. I don't deserve you. You don't get to decide what you deserve right now. You just get to accept help when it's offered. Camila stood up and began pacing. When will you get here? A couple of hours. My dad is coming too. He wants to help with the legal situation, and he thinks having family support will look good if this goes to court. Good. We'll figure this out together. Camila, there's one more thing. My lawyer thinks it would be helpful if we could show that Emma has a stable, two-parent home environment. He suggested. Adrian trailed off, and Camila felt her heart start to race. He suggested what? He suggested we get married. Like next week soon. Camila stopped pacing and sat down hard on her couch. Married. I know it's not romantic. I know it's not how you probably imagine someone proposing to you. But Camila, I was going to ask you anyway. Maybe not this soon, maybe with more planning and a ring and some kind of romantic gesture, but I was always going to ask you. Adrian? I love you. Emma loves you. You're already part of our family in every way that matters. Making it legal would just be making it official. Camila stared out her front window at the street where she'd first seen Adrian's headlights through the snow, thinking about how much her life had changed in such a short time. 3 weeks ago, the idea of marrying someone she'd known for a month would have seemed insane. Now, the idea of not being legally connected to Adrian and Emma, of not being able to make medical decisions for Emma if something happened, of not being recognized as her family, seemed equally insane. Camila? Are you still there? I'm here. I'm just thinking. About what? About whether Emma would want me to wear white to our wedding or if she'd prefer something more colorful. There was silence on the other end of the line, then Adrian's voice, rough with emotion. Is that a yes? That's a yes, Adrian. But not just because of the custody situation. I want to marry you because I can't imagine my life without you and Emma in it. I want to marry you because when I think about the future, you're both in every single scenario I envision. God, I love you. I love you too. Both of you. Now stop worrying about legal strategies and get my family home to me. Your family? That's what we are, isn't it? The three of us. Yes, Adrian said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. That's exactly what we are. After they hung up, Camila sat in her quiet house and tried to process what had just happened. In the space of one phone call, she'd committed to marriage, agreed to a potential legal battle, and accepted that her private life might become public scrutiny. But as she looked around her small living room, imagining it filled with Emma's laughter and Adrian's presence, she realized she wasn't scared. She was ready. For all of it. Because some things were worth fighting for, and this family they'd built from a snowstorm and 3 days of trust was definitely worth fighting for. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Emma's excited to see you. She clapped when I told her we were going to Camila's house. Camila smiled and typed back, tell her I'm excited to see her too. And Adrian? Yeah. Tell her mommy's waiting for her. The response came immediately, she just smiled the biggest smile I've ever seen. I think she approves. Camila looked at that word mommy and felt something settle into place in her chest. She was going to be Emma's mother. Legally, officially, permanently. The thought should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like coming home. She spent the next hour preparing for their arrival, making sure there was food in the house for the weekend and space for Richard, who would apparently be staying as well. As she worked, she found herself humming, anticipating the sound of Emma's laughter filling the house again. When she heard Adrian's car in the driveway, she ran to the door without bothering with a coat. Emma was already reaching for her from her car seat, making excited sounds that could only mean one thing. She was happy to be back where she belonged. Hello, sweet girl, Camila said, lifting Emma out of the car and spinning her around, earning delighted giggles. Did you miss me? Emma responded by patting Camila's face gently and babbling something that sounded remarkably like mama. Adrian froze in the act of unloading luggage. Did she just? I think she did, Camila said, looking down at Emma with tears in her eyes. I think she just called me mama. Richard, who had been getting out of the passenger seat, smiled broadly. Well, that settles that. Emma knows what she wants, and what she wants is for Camila to be her mother. Is that what you want, sweet girl? Camila asked Emma softly. Do you want me to be your mama? Emma looked at her with those serious dark eyes, then broke into the biggest smile any of them had ever seen from her and clapped her hands together enthusiastically. I think that's a yes, Adrian said, wrapping his arms around both Camila and Emma. I think that's definitely a yes. Standing in her driveway, surrounded by the people who had become her world, Camila realized that storms sometimes brought the most unexpected gifts. And this particular storm had brought her everything she'd ever wanted without even knowing she wanted it. A family. A future. A love worth fighting for. Have you ever had a moment where everything just clicked into place? Where you knew without a doubt that you were exactly where you belonged? That's the power of real love. It doesn't ask permission, it doesn't wait for perfect timing, it just shows up and changes everything. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments. Do you believe in love at first sight, or do you think the best love stories are the ones that grow from friendship and trust? 1 year later. Camila stood in front of the full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the small chapel, adjusting the flowing skirt of her wedding dress. It wasn't the elaborate designer gown that Adrian could have easily afforded, but rather a simple, elegant dress in soft ivory that she'd fallen in love with the moment she saw it. The battle with Rebecca had been resolved months ago when it became clear that she was more interested in the potential financial settlement than in actually raising Emma, but Adrian had still wanted to wait a full year before they married, wanting to be absolutely certain they were doing it for love, not legal strategy. You look beautiful, Mija, her father said from behind her, his voice thick with emotion. Carlos Rodriguez had walked her down many paths in life, but this one felt like the most important. Thank you, Papa, Camila replied, turning to face him. The year had been good to her father. With his medical bills taken care of by his soon-to-be son-in-law, he'd been able to focus on managing his diabetes and had regained much of his strength and energy. Are you nervous? Carlos asked, straightening his new tie. Adrian had insisted on buying him a new suit for the wedding, and Carlos looked distinguished and proud. Not nervous, Camila said, considering the feeling in her chest. Excited. Ready. Like this is exactly what's supposed to happen. Adrian is a good man, Carlos said seriously. I wasn't sure at first, all that money and success, I worried he might not understand what real family means. But watching him with you and Emma this year, seeing how he put you both first during all that legal trouble, I know he's the right one for you. A soft knock at the door interrupted them, and Richard's voice came from the other side. May I come in? Of course, Camila called back. Richard entered carrying Emma, who was dressed in a tiny red dress with a full skirt that made her look like a princess. At 16 months old, Emma was walking confidently and had developed a vocabulary that consisted mostly of mama, dada, papa, her name for Richard, and no, her current favorite word. Someone wanted to see her mama before the ceremony, Richard said, setting Emma down so she could toddle over to Camila on unsteady but determined legs. Mama pretty, Emma announced, patting Camila's dress with gentle hands. Thank you, sweet girl, Camila said, kneeling down to Emma's level. You look pretty too. Are you ready to help Mama and Daddy get married today? Emma nodded seriously, then produced a slightly crushed flower from her tiny fist. For Mama. She's been carrying that around all morning, Richard explained with a chuckle. She insisted it was for you. Camila accepted the flower with the gravity it deserved. Thank you, Emma. It's perfect. The photographer wants a few pictures before the ceremony, Richard said. And Adrian is pacing a hole in the floor out there. I think he's more nervous than he's letting on. He has nothing to be nervous about, Camila said, standing and smoothing her dress. We're already a family. Today we're just making it official. They moved to the main area of the chapel, where the photographer captured images of Camila with her father, with Emma, and with Richard, who had become as much a father figure to her as a father-in-law. The chapel was small and intimate, decorated with white flowers and candles, exactly what Camila had wanted. Are you ready? Carlos asked as they lined up for the procession. I've been ready since the night of the snowstorm, Camila replied. The music began, and Emma toddled down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy, delighting the small gathering of friends and family. She made it halfway before deciding she wanted to sit with Richard, who scooped her up and settled her on his lap in the front row. Then it was Camila's turn, walking down the aisle on her father's arm toward Adrian, who stood at the altar looking absolutely perfect in his dark suit. When their eyes met, his face broke into the most radiant smile she'd ever seen, and any lingering nerves disappeared completely. You look incredible, he whispered when Carlos placed her hand in his. So do you, she whispered back. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt, focusing on the vows they'd written to each other rather than elaborate rituals. When it came time for Adrian to speak, he turned to face Camila fully, taking both her hands in his. Camila, a year and a half ago I thought I knew what my life was going to look like. I was going to focus on work and raise Emma alone, and that was going to be enough. Then a snowstorm forced me to knock on your door, and you opened it without hesitation, welcoming two strangers into your home and your heart. Emma chose that moment to escape from Richard's lap and toddle over to them, wrapping her arms around Camila's legs and looking up at both her parents with satisfaction. I guess someone thinks she belongs up here with us, the officiant said with a smile. Adrian scooped Emma up and continued his vows with their daughter in his arms. You didn't just save us from that storm, Camila. You saved us from a life that was safe but incomplete. You taught me that family isn't just about blood or obligation, it's about choosing to love someone every day, even when it's complicated or scary or inconvenient. Camila felt tears spilling down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, overwhelmed by the completeness of this moment. You've been Emma's mother in every way that matters since the day you met her, and you've been my partner through every challenge we've faced. I promise to choose you every day, to put our family first, to never take for granted the miracle of finding someone who loves me and my daughter exactly as we are. When it was Camila's turn, she looked at Adrian holding Emma, both of them watching her with identical expressions of love and trust, and felt her heart overflow. Adrian, when you showed up at my door that night, I thought I was just helping a stranger in a storm. I had no idea I was opening my door to my future husband and my daughter. She reached over to smooth one of Emma's curls, earning a happy babble from the toddler. You both changed my life in the most beautiful way possible. Emma, sweet girl, you made me a mother before I even knew I wanted to be one. You taught me that love doesn't have to be earned or proved, it can just be given freely and completely. I promise to be the mother you deserve, to protect you and guide you and love you unconditionally for the rest of my life. Emma patted Camila's face gently as if sealing the promise, then looked at Adrian and said clearly, Mama, Dada, Emma? That's right, princess, Adrian said, his voice thick with emotion. We're all together now. Adrian, Camila continued, you showed me what it means to put family first, not just in words but in actions. You've supported my dreams, cared for my father like he was your own, and trusted me with the most precious thing in your life. I promise to be your partner in everything, to face whatever storms come our way together, and to choose love over fear every single day. The exchange of rings was brief, both of them eager to get to the part where they were officially married. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Adrian kissed Camila with Emma still in his arms, their daughter clapping enthusiastically at the display of affection. The reception was held in the fellowship hall of the chapel, a casual affair with Emma toddling between guests and charming everyone with her bright smile and fearless personality. Camila watched Adrian dance with his daughter to a slow song, both of them laughing, and felt a deep contentment settle over her. Happy? Richard asked, joining her at their table. Incredibly, Camila replied. Thank you, by the way. For what? For accepting me. For trusting me with them. For becoming the grandfather Emma deserves and the father-in-law I never expected to have. Richard smiled and patted her hand. Thank you for saving my family. All of us. As the evening wound down, Camila and Adrian found themselves alone on the small dance floor, swaying to music while Emma slept peacefully in her portable crib nearby, worn out from all the excitement. So, Mrs. Campbell, Adrian said, spinning her gently, any regrets? Only one, Camila said, then laughed at his alarmed expression. I regret that it took a snowstorm to bring us together. Think of all the time we could have had. I don't regret the timing, Adrian said, pulling her closer. I think we found each other exactly when we were supposed to. You weren't ready for us any sooner, and I wasn't ready to let anyone into Emma's life until I met someone who loved her as much as I do. And now we have the rest of our lives to build something beautiful together. Emma stirred in her crib and made a small sound. Without discussion, both parents moved toward her, Adrian lifting her gently while Camila gathered her blanket. Home? Adrian asked quietly. Home, Camila agreed. Their home now was a larger house on the outskirts of town, big enough for Emma to run around in and for the family they hoped to grow, but still in the community where Camila had roots and her father lived nearby. It was the perfect compromise between Adrian's means and Camila's need to stay connected to the life she'd built. As they drove through the quiet streets with Emma sleeping in her car seat, Camila reflected on how much had changed since that stormy night 18 months ago. She'd finished her medical assistant certification and now worked part-time at a pediatric clinic, spending the rest of her time with Emma and managing some of Adrian's charitable foundation work. Adrian had restructured his business to allow for more remote work and family time, proving that success didn't have to come at the expense of the people you love. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked as they pulled into their driveway. Just, all of it. How different my life is now, how happy I am, how grateful I am that you got caught in that storm. Best storm of my life, Adrian said, reaching over to take her hand. They carried a sleeping Emma inside and got her settled in her crib, both of them standing over her for a moment just watching her breathe, still amazed by the miracle of this little person who had brought them together. I have something for you, Adrian said quietly as they headed to their own bedroom. Adrian, we already exchanged rings. You didn't need to get me anything else. This isn't a wedding gift exactly, he said, pulling a legal document from his dresser drawer. It's Emma's new birth certificate, with your name listed as her mother. Camila took the document with shaking hands, seeing her name officially recorded as Emma Rodriguez Campbell's mother. Adrian? You've been her mother since the day you met her, he said gently. Now it's legal and official. She's as much yours as she is mine. Camila looked at the document through tears of joy, then set it carefully on the dresser before throwing her arms around her husband. I love you both so much. We love you too, Adrian said, holding her tight. More than you'll ever know. Later, as they lay in bed listening to the quiet sounds of their daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, Camila thought about the unpredictability of life. How a snowstorm could change everything. How opening a door to strangers could lead to opening your heart to love you never saw coming. Adrian, she said softly. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter what storms come our way in the future, we'll face them together. The three of us as a family. I promise, Adrian said, pulling her closer. Always together. Always a family. Outside their window, snow had begun to fall again, light flakes drifting past the glass like a gentle reminder of the storm that had brought them together. But inside their warm house, with their daughter sleeping safely nearby and their future stretching ahead of them full of promise, Camila felt nothing but gratitude for the unexpected gift of the family they'd built from trust, love, and 3 days that had changed everything. Some storms destroy, but the best ones bring exactly what you didn't know you needed. And this storm had brought them each other forever.